In 2023, Fred again broke the internet with his Tiny Desk Concert. The performance was raw, unedited, but beautiful. Parts of the performance seemed like magic. And today I'm going to help you understand how that magic happens, and I'm going to show you the 5 invisible techniques he uses, including the hands-free looping hack and the effects chain that turns acoustic instruments into EDM soundscapes. Sound good? Let's go. Chapter 1. What tech does he use? Now, before we look at how he loops, we have to talk about what he's using. Like most live looping artists, you have a choice between a pedal board or a laptop running music software. Fred uses the latter. He uses a laptop or a Mac to run the session. Laptops allow you to have very specific tech perfectly set up for how you play. Pedal boards, on the other hand, are off the shelf, so they're good if you're someone who doesn't want to tweak everything. So that's why Fred needs a laptop. He needs to tweak. Now, if you ask any electronic musician what software they use for a live show, 99% of them will say Ableton Live. It's the industry standard, it's built for looping, it's what everyone uses. But Fred, he's different. Fred is actually using Logic Pro. This might sound like a small detail, but for music nerds, this is actually kind of wild. Logic is traditionally used for writing music in a studio, not performing it on stage. Fred has used Logic since he was a teenager, and instead of learning new software for the stage, he just forced Logic to work for him. Now, how does he control it? Well, he uses this. This is the Native Instruments machine. Think of the laptop as the brain that holds all of the sounds and effects. And think of the machine as the steering wheel, which you use to control the engine. He also has a couple of other MIDI controllers which are similar to the machine. So how did he use this to do his looping? Chapter 2, Hands-Free Looping. A fundamental building block of the Tiny Desk Concert is looping. Fred uses looping extensively as part of this performance, and I want to explain how this works. As a sidebar, if you're wondering why he has an iPhone earpiece in his ear, I can explain. This is so that he can hear the loops and the recordings that he has made. Plus, it will also have a click track or a metronome playing in that earpiece, and that'll keep him in time. It basically gives him the pulse of the music to play along to. Most performers use something a bit more technical than an iPhone headpiece, but hey, it looks cool. So let's start with a great example of a hands-free live loop at 58 seconds into the performance. You may have seen looping artists like Ed Sheeran perform. Many of them use a foot pedal to trigger their looper to record what they're playing. These are the pedal boards that I described earlier. For people like Fred using laptops, they're normally controlled by pressing buttons on a MIDI controller, as I showed you earlier. So we see Fred doing this a lot in this session, pressing buttons to start loops. However, when he first records the loop, he doesn't press anything with his hands. And this makes sense if you think about it. For the marimba parts, Fred doesn't have a spare hand to trigger a loop to record. Likewise, when he's playing the piano, he's got 2 hands on the piano, he can't spare one. The only limbs free to Fred are his legs. So I think it's highly likely that Fred uses a foot pedal connected to the laptop. Now, we can't see Fred's feet, so we don't know for certain that he's pressing a pedal, but my gut instinct from years of looping is that he is using a foot pedal whenever he needs to record a loop. The FCB 1010 is an example of a MIDI foot pedal that I own and I use. It's a pedal you connect to the laptop, and whenever you press one of these buttons, it will trigger the laptop to record the loop. Normally, the different buttons do different things, so button 1 might record a piano loop, button 2 might record the marimba loop. You and I don't see anything that he's doing because he's using his feet, and it all flows like magic. So that's a pretty cool setup. And while you're here, this channel is dedicated to live performance, chord theory, and looping. So if you want to know a bit more about how music and looping works, including some really nerdy videos from me, then please consider hitting that subscribe button. Chapter 3, Clever Use of Effects. If you're like me, there are a couple of moments in Fred again's NPR Tiny Desk Concert that stand out. Moments where he adjusts the sounds that he's making on the fly. It's an incredible part of his performance. And I'm going to walk you through 2 brilliant examples. And I'm going to bring you into my world of nerdiness. Example 1. Modulate to make a pad. So this happens at 15 seconds into the concert, and this is the moment that first made me sit up in my chair watching this video. Fred plays a simple marimba part at the start of the concert, but then he walks over to the desk and starts moving knobs on his device. What he does is he turns the marimba sound into a pad sound. And what do I mean by this? The marimba sound has a wooden, bright sound when you hit it. This comes from the beater hitting the wood. The sound wave of a marimba looks like this. it means you can clearly hear every note individually. Now, Fred again, being a DJ, will often use synth sounds called pads. These sounds are much softer and the individual notes blend together much more. Pad synth sounds are a hallmark of EDM music, and many producers will spend a lot of time perfecting their pad sounds for their songs. By applying a combination of audio effects like reverb, delay and modulation within his audio software, he flattens the sound of each sound wave so it looks like this. And it sounds like this. Now this sound here is me attempting to replicate Fred. It isn't perfectly the same, but it gives you the sense of what is happening. Then to control this, Fred has mapped the combination of effects to a MIDI controller, like the machine. So when he turns the knob, the sound basically moves towards the pad sound. Why does Fred do this? Well, pad sounds blend into the background of a song, providing an interesting and evolving character. Pad sounds also give the song a much stronger electronic sound or EDM sound. For me, the magic comes from seeing him play the instrument and then dialing in this sound on his MIDI controller. It's like you're seeing how the sausage is made. It's quite an incredible moment which immediately had me thinking, how does he do that? Which drove me to make this video. Example 2, turn a pad sound into a beat. Another great example from the Tiny Desk Concert comes from when Fred uses effects to convert a marimba part into a beat. Listen here. I think that's really cool. Suddenly we have a lush, interesting beat which he plays along with. So how does he do it? Firstly, you'll notice he's doing something similar to the sound in the first example. He's turning the marimba sound into a pad sound. But then a beat starts to surface from within until it clearly takes over the sound. It's like the pad sound is playing a beat. It's really cool. There are quite a few ways you can do this. I've managed to replicate it using an effect called a vocoder. You may have heard this effect used by Daft Punk. In really simple terms, a vocoder takes one sound, the marimba, and imprints this on another sound, the beat. So you get the rhythm from the beat and the sound from the pad. And as you saw, he dials this effect in using the knobs on his machine or his MIDI controller. It's such a brilliant use of tech, something I'm definitely going to steal with pride. Chapter 4, Incredible Videos Incorporated. One of the features of this amazing performance is the use of a number of video files, which have poems or songs being sung. Fred presses a button on his MIDI controller, which then launches the video on the screen and plays the audio through his laptop. This is pretty amazing. It makes the video's audio be part of the show itself, like he's hired in a number of talented singers for his performance. As a nerd, I can tell you that this is actually a little bit tricky to do. You see, most audio software is set up for audio only. So triggering a video in the same way as audio will have required some techie skills from Fred. Ultimately, I'm pretty sure that Fred uses MIDI, a word I mentioned earlier, but I'll explain now. MIDI is a music software language that sends messages. You send MIDI messages from this controller to the computer. The computer then performs the actions that you define. So the speed of the MIDI signal is so fast that it feels instantaneous. And it's really important if you're trying to trigger a sound sample at a specific moment. The instantaneous nature of MIDI is a pretty amazing thing, given MIDI first got introduced back in the 1980s. I don't think there's much other music tech that has survived since then, to be fair. For the super nerdy, there is a next level technique that Fred uses with his video files. You may have noticed that the videos have a number of different ways of playing. Sometimes they play once and then stop, or sometimes they play and repeat and keep repeating, and sometimes they play one after the other. But each of those scenarios is still triggered by pressing one button. This is actually quite easy to do in music software, and it's called follow actions. So if you define what action you want to follow after you've completed the first action, so you might define the follow action to be stop the video after playing once, or the follow action might be play video A, then play video B. This is a very useful feature that a lot of EDM performers use in their live sets. And my final point on these videos that he incorporates is it sounds that he uses pitch correction or auto-tune on some of them. That's okay, this doesn't mean the singers can't sing. My guess is it allows Fred to make sure that the vocals align perfectly with the notes he's going to play on the piano. And you can do that in pitch correction software. I really love how Fred has created a beautiful soundscape for these videos to express themselves in. Chapter 5, he invents new instruments. Another thing Fred does is to experiment with instruments. This creates a really interesting dynamic. It subverts our expectations on what we will hear. The first example is at 4 minutes and 47 seconds, and it's that crazy piano loop. So the sound he's getting here is generated from the piano. Specifically, the piano he is playing is an upright piano. You can see it from some angles, but he has actually taken the front panel off the piano. Normally you only do this to tune the piano. This allows him to put his hand on the piano strings, which deadens the note. It makes a really interesting sound. The next example is at 5 minutes and 2 seconds. Fred plays a drum beat on the table. How cool is this? Fred hits the table with the palm of his hand for a kick drum, and then does a knock sound for the snare. And this beat sounds surprisingly good. I want to use this particular beat to point out my favourite moment in the set. In a world of AI slop music, I'm getting tired of hearing perfect music. It's got no soul. Live music contains mistakes. That jeopardy for the performer creates an energy that studio or AI music struggle to replicate. So, what is Fred's mistake? At 5 minutes and 2 seconds, listen to this loop. Can you hear that double kick where the beat repeats? At the start of the loop, Fred hits the desk for the kick sound on beat 1. He then records the beat for a couple of bars. At the end of the loop, he starts the loop again, playing one more beat on beat 1. But because he is human, he doesn't perfectly line up these two beats, meaning you get the double sound of the kick, even though they're supposed to be on the same part of the bar. If this was a pre-recorded backing track, this wouldn't be there. If this was a triggered loop, it wouldn't be there. If this was AI, it wouldn't be there. That tiny imperfection is what makes this performance perfect. It proves the risks involved. It proves Fred again is human and making human music. And then, the most incredible sound in the whole concert, in my opinion at least, is at 5 minutes and 24 seconds. A haunting and beautiful loop played with a cello bow on a vibraphone. The vibraphone is a cool instrument used a lot in jazz, and you'll hear it in Disney's The Incredibles soundtrack. This instrument has a damper pedal, which is a core part of the sound. The damper pedal is on by default, so the instrument sounds deadened when you play it in its default position. When you press this foot pedal down, it undamps the instrument and it sounds like this. So here, Fred is pressing the pedal down, so the sound is undamped, but then he plays it with a cello bow. It might be a double bass bow. If you know, let me know in the comments. So without any audio effects, Fred is creating a pad sound. And remember earlier I talked about the marimba sound having that hard sound from the beater, and how Fred uses effects to smooth and soften that sound? This is another way of doing that on the instrument itself, rather than with effects or processing. Bonus nerdy point. The piano riff and the vibraphone riff are both in a minor key. Listen here. Can you hear how they sound sad or mournful? But then when he starts playing the piano, he plays in a major key. Can you hear how the energy immediately shifts? The piano is playing the major chord of the same key, so it's the relative major of that minor key he was playing already. And this means the two parts fit together well. But how Fred uses it, he again subverts expectations and drives the energy of the music cleverly. It's an incredible use of chords and theory in a way that is just beautiful. Fred again reminds us that you can be a nerd about gear, but the emotion comes first. And if you want to see another artist who masters the emotion of looping, but this time through pedal boards, and has amassed hundreds of millions of views on YouTube, check out my breakdown of Tash Sultana right here.